Who am I? I've been asking that question to myself since the day I can remember. Because honestly, I've always had this strange feeling that everything was a lie around me. That's one of the reasons I became an investigative journalist. Seek the truth to uncover the lies. At first, I actually thought about the FBI, to be honest, but then I learned I couldn't trust them either. Power corrupts absolutely. In order to remain, lies became necessary in our digital world, with one post on social media changing the minds of millions. All it took was one misquote, one mistake, one time where you were just caught being human. No one is perfect, and we seek perfection in our leaders and our safety and security. So those who reach those heights must bend the truth or outright lie to hide their imperfections and to breed doubts about their opponents. A never-ending cycle of they said I didn't say. I was only 10 years old back in 1996, just a few months after Dallas won the big game over Pittsburgh. The FBI arrested the Unabomber. You remember him? I followed this story for a while, but actually became enamored with the news coverage itself as opposed to what actually had happened. To be honest, as a young kid, I didn't understand completely. But the way they covered everything made me very upset. Asking officials for opinions, not being told anything of substance, reporting on the same quotes. I wondered why certain questions weren't asked. And then I began noticing this in many stories. Reporters getting their information solely from law enforcement, and the information clearly being skewed and carefully crafted to mold what the story was. And many times, it was just wrong. But no one would see a retraction. They would just remember the quotes from officials, think it was the truth. I made it a life goal to become a journalist at this point, giving up my imagined Fox Mulder life. By 22, I was working for the top newspaper/video station in the United States. But still, even as I became well known in my circles in just the 3 years I was there, Mario Cozzi, award-winning investigative reporter, breaks another story, pissing off powerful people, fearing for my life at times with unknown threats coming my way, being adored, respected, to be honest, a little bit powerful myself. I realized I was becoming like the people I hated, searching so hard for stories that I was listening to the liars too much, being used because they knew I wanted to win first place in the newspaper awards. It was then that I started playing fantasy football, when I was about 25 back in 2011. My competitive nature and love to win was quenched pretty easily. It is a useless power in the larger scheme of things, but it kept me from falling into the same traps in my real life. I also left my job, joined a small independent news operation with low pay, very few resources, and not enough clout to even get a press pass to cover the elections. But I was given freedom, and I used my skill of investigation to continue my work. But this time, it was a grind. It was even more dangerous, and I had no power with most people, disregarding my stories, saying I'd lost my mind. But I was telling people the truth, and more often than not, others began to listen. Protests popped up, officials resigned. I was accomplishing more than I ever did, and it was all for the truth, not for glory. My glory came from winning my fantasy football league. Before we get off track, let me get back to my inner self. Who am I? Even with me reaching my goals of showing the truth and fighting back the lies, I still struggle with my mind. I was an orphan, never knew my parents, and neither did the orphanage. They found me on the doorstep in a basket like I was some ridiculous fairy tale. Some worker named me Mario because the original NES game was released in North America that year, and it was very popular. My first real memories came when I was about 7 years old. I began having these strange dreams. They began as nightmares, darkness spreading, destruction and death around me. I seemed to be at the center of it. But then there was always a light. I remember these shadows within the light telling me to remain strong, that I was some sort of a vessel for something greater. Unfortunately, the light faded, and I was left on a throne, looking out on a scorched earth. I kept asking, why was I the king of decay and decadence? I had sleep studies done where they monitored my brainwaves in REM sleep. They picked up odd anomalies, chemical signatures that didn't seem human in nature. So I began to get tested for everything you can possibly think of. No diseases though, and definitely human. In the end, the scientists chalked it up to some unknown and filed it away. The psychiatrists told me that the dreams represented my fear of failing, but my desire to succeed, an internal struggle they believe gave credence to my difficulties with school and with authority at that age. I apparently had the drive to be a leader, but was afraid to put myself out there. Therefore, I acted out and disregarded my assignments in protest. They put me on something they said helped me focus, and in all reality it did, because I was so groggy and out of it at nights, I didn't remember my dreams anymore. When I was 10, I was adopted by an Italian-American family, and that's where I get my last name Cozzi from. I was given many opportunities and ended up being valedictorian of the university I went to. The name of the university isn't important, one of those private schools. I was doing really well too, became friends with interesting people. I even had a friend with access to a DNA database who helped me search for my parents to see if they can find a lead. Nothing, not even a relative to match. They said it was highly unusual. Seriously, it made me feel like I just appeared into existence, but it did make me appreciate my adoptive parents even more. They were there for me, there to listen. It's tough to speak of their demise. A car accident. I received a call when I was in graduate school at 21. Almost dropped out, barely finished. The only thing keeping me going was the prospect of being important. Someone who can make a difference. And that's when the dream started again. I stopped taking my medication, drank too much, and the only thing that kept me sane was staying awake almost all night working on my stories. So that's what I did. And here we are now, my nightmares coming true. I still don't know who I am, but I must find out soon. I feel the end is coming. And I think I might be the reason.
Welcome to the quest for the Green Bowl, the rise of Azath. One team has clinched a playoff berth now, though the division title will have to wait one more week. A second division title and playoff berth is also a win away now, and the wild cards and third division title do remain up for grabs as we closed out our out-of-division slate of the schedule. 2 months, 8 weeks, so many good contests, tiebreakers flying all over the place. So many big games, many with playoff feel either as a potential preview for this year's tournament or with teams fighting for a chance just to get in. Results were odd and mixed, but several teams stepped up as the true favorites. Definitely become a little bit clearer. And all the drama came to our head in our These stellar bitches of Ganymede hosted the Siamese Dream Cats of EO at the Temple of SeaTac. This one turned out to be. This one came down to Sunday night, and it was X Factor Isaiah Pacheco, not to be confused with Donald R. DeChico, who comes from France, of course, Pacheco made a big impact as the Dreamcats pulled off the 108.46 to 96.3 win. Pacheco had a simple 107 yards, but he helped the Kansas City offense move the ball so Mahomes could hit Kelsey for multiple touchdowns and knock down the score of the Chargers defense on the other side. Tony Pollard also was a maniac again, 189 total yards and 2 touchdowns, including one with a 50-plus yard bonus. Lamar Jackson added a rushing touchdown, though he underperformed again, and Burks had a nice game with 111 yards. Koo and the Colts defense combined for 22 points, which also helped a lot. Prescott did throw for 2 touchdowns, and Henry had his usual beast game with 132 yards and 2 scores, including a passing score. The rest of the stellar bitches lacked touchdowns, though, and it hurt in a big way. The Dreamcats moved to 6-5 overall and are now 5th in the league standings, and these stellar bitches, which are now 0-5 at home, fall to 2-9 and are officially eliminated from playoff contention. The elite Mother Tuckers of EO travel to the salt mines of Thorgard to take on Europa's Loki Lebowski Thor. The elite Mother Tuckers are still riding high after this one, claiming their 10th straight win in a 102.9 to 67.3 victory. The win, of course, sealed the first playoff berth of 2022. Solid once again, the elite Mother Tuckers had 2 scores by Jalen Hurts with 190 passing yards and 86 rushing yards. Eckler added 100 yards and a touchdown, and Jacobs finished with 160 yards. The Cowboys defense went off for 7 sacks and a fumble recovery and allowed just 3 points to the Vikings. The only downside is that they were just behind the 108 points they needed to keep pace for the league regular season scoring record. Lebowski Thor once again struggled with 2 touchdowns by Herbert and a touchdown by Deebo Samuel being the highlights of another rough week to close out of division play. The elite Mother Tuckers are now 10-1, which is the best record after 11 games in league history. They need to go 2-1 to beat the record for most wins in a regular season. If they win out, they will also have the record for the least amount of losses in a regular season. Lebowski Thor falls to 4-7 with a 5th straight defeat. The Clash at Demon Head hosted defending champion Remember the Titans at the Swirling Skies at Havard Point in a Europa versus Ganymede game. And this one was a tough one for Remember the Titans, which were flying high after a Game of the Week win last time, as the Clash at Demon Head kept slim playoff hopes alive in a 95.12 to 76.42 win. Garoppolo finished with 4 touchdowns and McCaffrey added 106 yards. Trade pickups Gibson and Murray were also key. Gibson had 103 yards, and Murray collected 72 yards and a touchdown. Curtis Samuel also scored. Remember, the Titans had 153 passing yards, 85 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns by Fields. But Fields hurt his shoulder, which could be a nightmare scenario for the defending champions here. Higgins did collect 148 yards, and the Jets' defense had 6 sacks and 10 points allowed, but it just wasn't enough. The Clash at Demon Head moves to 4-7 and jumps all the way back into 2nd place in the Europa division based on tiebreaker. Remember, the Titans falls to 5-6 overall and is now on the outside looking in at 7th place. AR's Ayahuasca Plant hosted Uncle Justy at the Peaks of Dracos in a Ganymede versus Europa showdown. AR's Ayahuasca Plant's doing all he can. He moved back to 500 at his home base with a 123.58 to 75.24 win. Aaron Rodgers did well with 2 touchdowns, and Adams was a monster with 141 yards and 2 scores. Kittle went off for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Montgomery finished with 121 yards and a touchdown. Hopkins also chipped in 91 yards. Uncle Justy had a rough time, but did get 97 yards and a touchdown by trade pickup Singletary, and he had 2 touchdowns by Mariota. Not much to speak of after that. AR's Ayahuasca Plant moves to 5-6 overall and is now in 6th place in the league in the heat of the playoff race. He keeps coming back every time you knock him down. Nobody can keep AR's Ayahuasca Plant in a corner. Uncle Justy falls to 4-7 and is back in last place in Europa. Tough times. Green Acres hosted the multiple scoregasms at the Lava Castle of Drusus in the Neo versus Ganymede battle. The multiple scoregasms were able to put themselves closer to that coveted division title and move back in the race for the 2 seed in a first round bye, picking up the 92.28 to 88.1 win. Olave had 102 yards, including a 50-plus yard touchdown, and Taylor added 94 yards in a score, though he did lose a fumble. Josh Allen struggled with just 1 touchdown, but Connor added 54 yards in a score. The 49ers defense were key too, with 3 sacks and 2 interceptions, allowing just 10 points. Green Acres picked up 355 passing yards and 4 touchdowns by Burrow, and he had 116 yards and 2 touchdowns by Najee Harris. Diggs also scored, but the Bengals defense underperformed, finished with negative points, and Foreman and Robinson combined for just 3.4 points out of the running back positions. The multiple scoregasms moved to 7-4 overall and are 2 games in first with 3 to play in Ganymede. Green Acres falls to 5-6 and plummeted all the way to 8th place in the league. Lastly, my Dark Ridge Dreamers hosted Risky Business at the icy caverns of Varangier in a Europa versus Zio battle that definitely could still be a potential Green Bowl preview. But it was Risky Business coming to play here while my Dreamers decided to take a week off, take some vacations, forget how to play football. Risky Business crushed my squad, 125.46 to 53.28. Mahomes had 3 touchdown passes to Travis Kelce as they combined for 62.96 points. The Patriots defense added a punt return for a touchdown and another dominant performance, and Butker had a good game too. Risky Business had 35 points in the defense and kicker positions. My Dreamers struggled mightily with 0 touchdowns, several disappointing performances despite premier matchups, and another injury. Gano also missed 2 extra points to explain how rough of a week it was. The Ravens defense were the only highlight for sure. They had 20 points thanks to 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a fumble recovery. It was definitely a forgettable week for my Dreamers, but luckily there's a buffer, and my Dreamers are still close to getting into the playoffs with the division title still definitely there. Risky Business, of course, moves to 7-4 overall and is definitely entrenching himself in that 4th position. My Dreamers are 7-4, still technically the 2 seed with a magic number of 1 to clinch the division. The playoff race definitely got a little bit of clarity with the top wild card getting closer and the second wild card putting themselves in a very, very, very good position. It will be a fun finish as we have 3 weeks to go. But seriously, expect the unexpected. That's how these things go. This is fantasy football. And the chaos from this game and from the shadows, of course, messing with all of us, certainly making our heads spin. And that's the content for the show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Join me tomorrow as I go over the upcoming matchups and our final home base and our Game of the Week segments. Until next time, salut. Check out the updated power rankings before you go.